The drizzle had turned into a steady rhythm, tapping against Alexander Kane's shoulders like accusing fingers. He stood there, motionless, in front of the one house he swore he'd never return to. 5 years ago, he had walked out of this door in an Armani suit with a signed divorce decree tucked neatly in his briefcase, his eyes fixed ahead toward fortune and power. He didn't look back, not even once. Now, with more money than he could ever spend and more accolades than he could count, he finally dared to. The neighborhood hadn't changed much. The same cracked pavement he used to promise he'd repair, next month. The same maple tree under which they once sat eating cheap takeout because she loved earthy picnics. The same little wind chimes she'd hung by the door that he once found annoying, now they sounded like a haunting melody. His black luxury sedan sat idling behind him, engine humming, contrasting painfully with the modest row of houses. His driver, accustomed to chauffeuring him between boardrooms and private jets, watched anxiously through the mirror, unsure whether to intervene or pretend not to see his powerful employer frozen by a simple wooden door. Alexander's hand trembled slightly as he clutched a worn leather photo album against his chest. The only thing he'd taken when he left was his watch and this album. He had told himself it was, for legal purposes, but deep down, it was the last lifeline to a world he'd abandoned. He had kept it locked away for years. But now, he needed it. Not for himself. He told himself that lie, too, but because it belonged to her. Just ring the bell, he urged himself. But how could a man who could negotiate billion-dollar deals suddenly not find the strength to press a doorbell? He didn't even know why he'd come. Or perhaps he knew, and it terrified him. It wasn't seeing her at the grocery store that woke him up. It was seeing her smile without him. She had been picking up lilies, her favorite flower, and chatting with an elderly cashier. She wasn't rich, she wasn't dressed up, and yet she glowed. Radiant, peaceful, a peace he'd never managed to buy for himself. His heart had cracked like shattered glass. Without thinking, he followed her at a distance. He watched her load groceries into the trunk of an aging sedan. She paused to help a struggling mother with her bags. She laughed when a child accidentally splashed her with a puddle. She was alive, while he was merely functioning. Now here he was, 5 days later, soaked in rain, rehearsing apologies that suddenly felt inadequate. "I'm sorry," wasn't enough. "I should have chosen you," was too late. Nothing he could say would erase what he'd done. But he wasn't here to erase. He was here to return. He exhaled shakily, pressed the bell, and stood at attention, like a soldier awaiting judgment. Seconds felt like minutes. The door handle clicked, and there she was, Julia. The same familiar hazel eyes, now steadier. The same freckles he used to trace absent-mindedly. But her posture was different, no longer leaning toward him, no longer expectant. Instead, guarded, collected, strong. Her lips parted, stunned. Then hardened. "Alexander," she said slowly, her voice careful. He swallowed, his throat dry despite the rain. "Yes," he breathed. I came to return something." She didn't invite him in. She didn't even open the door fully. "Why now?" she demanded, her tone flat, not angry, not emotional. Just distant. He held the photo album between them like a confession. "Because it never belonged to me," he said quietly. "It always belonged to you." The silence that followed was heavier than any courtroom verdict. And Alexander knew, this was only the beginning. Julia's fingers tightened around the door as she stared at the album, not at him. Not even once. It was as if she refused to grant him the privilege of meeting her eyes. For a woman who once read his soul in every glance, that silence slashed deeper than any shouted accusation. "Return it," she said coldly. "Then leave." He didn't move. Instead, he opened the cover. The old leather creaked like a sigh between them. A photo slid into view, Julia in her wedding dress, barefoot on the sandy beach, sunlight painting her hair gold. She was laughing at something he had said, he didn't remember what. Back then, everything about her made him laugh. Everything about her made him stay. Now everything about her made him ache. He traced the image with a careful thumb. "I kept it all these years," he whispered, more to himself than to her. "Even when I tried to pretend I was fine without you." Her eyes flicked upward, just a millisecond of betrayal in her gaze, curiosity battling restraint. But she quickly shut it down. "Why are you really here, Alex?" He could have listed rehearsed phrases. He could have spoken about how success had turned to dust in his mouth, how accolades echoed in empty halls, how even his employees feared him more than respected him. But none of those words mattered. So he spoke the only truth he had. Because I didn't realize losing you would cost me everything, even myself. The rain intensified, drumming on his shoulders. Water dripped down his temple, but he didn't wipe it away. He stood there like a sinner awaiting absolution. Julia's lips trembled for a moment before she reined them in. You didn't lose me, she said sharply. You let me go. There's a difference. He nodded slowly. You're right. Lightning flashed faintly in the distance. The wind chimes rattled. Neither of them moved. Do you honestly expect me to forgive you? She asked, voice cracking slightly before regaining strength. After you ignored me for months. After our dinners turned into one-sided conversations with your phone. After I sat alone in bed listening to you negotiate property deals at 2 in the morning. He did not defend himself. He didn't dare. Instead, he walked past her, slowly, lowering himself onto the wet front porch step. His expensive coat soaked instantly, darkening against the pavement. He didn't care. Her brows furrowed in disbelief. What are you doing? I'm not asking to come inside, he said softly. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking for a second chance. She hesitated. Rain painted her face as she stood at the threshold, caught between sending him away and stepping toward him. Then what do you want? She demanded, voice barely above a whisper. He looked up, his expression vulnerable, something she hadn't seen from him in years. I just want to sit with the memories. Even if it's from your doorstep. Even if you never led me past it. Her breath caught. He turned another page of the album. A blurry photo of him carrying her into their first apartment. Boxes everywhere, both laughing hysterically because he had tripped over the welcome mat. He chuckled quietly. Do you remember? You threatened to leave me if I dropped you. She stared. His smile was small, wistful. You should've. Rain beaded at the tip of her lashes. She didn't argue, but she didn't close the door. The rain softened into a mist, as though even the sky held its breath. Julia stood unmoving in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself as if bracing for a storm that was no longer weather, but memory. Alexander sat silently, flipping another page. Their kitchen, burnt pancakes, smoke alarm blaring, Julia laughing while he fanned the ceiling with a towel. Another page, her asleep on his chest, drooling slightly while the TV played some late-night documentary neither of them cared about. And then, their last vacation before things went cold. He was on the phone. She was looking at him, smiling, but her eyes were already dimming. He swallowed hard. She noticed. You always said you were building us a future, she said quietly, staring into the rain. But you weren't building us. You were building you, and I just became, optional. He nodded, shoulders slumping. I know. For a long while, she said nothing. Then, something shifted. Not forgiveness, not tenderness, but exhaustion. She stepped past the door slowly, umbrella in hand. She hesitated, then extended it over him. It wasn't an invitation inside. It wasn't reconciliation. It was shelter. Alexander froze, looking up at her in disbelief. Julia, don't, she said, voice soft but firm. This doesn't change anything. You're still leaving today. He nodded. But, she added, glancing at the album, nobody should sit in the rain holding their past. He let out a shaky breath that turned into a half sob, half laugh. Even when you're angry, you're kind. Don't romanticize it, she warned. It's just instinct. She knelt beside him beneath the umbrella, careful not to touch him. They both stared ahead at the quiet street, listening to the rain pattering against nylon. After a moment, he spoke softly. Do you remember when we adopted that stray cat that kept breaking into our backyard? Her lips twitched. You cried when it ignored you for 3 days. It betrayed me. Smart cat. He chuckled, wiping at his wet face. God, I've missed this. Her breath hitched, but she masked it with a sigh. Alex, I don't know if there's anything left to salvage. Too much time has passed. He nodded slowly. I know. She looked at him then, really looked. Not at the billionaire, not at the man she once married, but at someone raw, stripped of pretense. What do you plan to do now? She asked. He closed the album gently. Come back tomorrow. She blinked. Why? So you can tell me to leave again, he said with a sad smile. But maybe, with slightly less anger. She studied him, her heart warred with her history. Finally, she whispered, come back tomorrow. He exhaled like she had handed him air. She stood, pulling the umbrella away. But next time, come dry. He rose slowly, drenched, clutching the album like a lifeline. He didn't reach for her. He didn't try to hug her. He only bowed his head in gratitude. Good night, Julia. She paused at the door. Her voice was quiet, almost lost in the rain. Good night, Alex. He walked away, not forgiven, not redeemed, but seen, and for the first time in 5 years. He believed tomorrow might be different.